All right, welcome CvCISO podcast listeners. This is episode 54 of the CvCISO podcast. Joining us is our usual cast, Jordan, Dave, Meg, and myself, Evan. Boom! Man, I feel fired up. Hey, Jordan, high fives, everybody virtual. Can you feel it? Oops, I missed your hand, hit your face. That sucks. All right, so Jordan, this is your topic this week. So get us started, man. What are we going to talk about?
I need everyone to listen up. You're not going to want to miss this episode. You're not going to want to miss any episode, really. And I know sometimes we talk a lot, but there's a lot of nuggets if you just stick with us. And this topic today is about why? Why? What a question, huh? Why?
Why?
Yeah,
I give up.
No, so today we're going to be talking about how do you discover your why? So like if you're a vCISO, you're doing this, whether you're starting your own vCISO practice or you're vCISO-ing for a company or whatever company you're a part of, there's a lot of buzz about why, and we've heard the why of Security Studio and FR Secure to fix a broken industry, the why of Evan. And maybe people just kind of have never gone through the process of what is your why and not even maybe just the headline, like fix a broken industry, but like maybe even connecting your values. Like, how do you discover what your true values are and how do you apply those to your vCISO practice or your business? So that's the topic today. Is we're going to kind of get some input from everyone here. I'll take you through maybe an exercise that I've gone through with when going through like EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system stuff, the traction stuff, and you're kind of building your vision and your why, and we'll see where it takes us. You guys can it'll be kind of a workshop. Like we can maybe the four of us can figure out if we were starting a business or if we're for this podcast with four unique individuals, how do we discover what the why is of us?
Wow, that's deep. No, I like it, man. There was a book that I read. It's my favorite book, honestly. My favorite business book is Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I read that book, what you're saying finally made sense to me, like why I was so focused on my why. And the reason why I was questioning that is because I'm amazed at how many people don't have a why. They haven't given it the thought. They just kind of go through the motions. And so in business and in life, I was like, man, there must be something wrong with me. Like I'm weird because I'm obsessive about my why. And then I read the Simon Sinek book and I was like, okay, no, this is it. It reinforced that how important it is to have your why. And I'm excited to hear from you guys about what your why is. If you maybe you don't know, and that's part of the podcast too, right? We're all at different points in life. So if you don't know your why, that's cool. Share, ask questions. If you think you know your why, then share that. Share how you arrived at your why, how you've had to defend your why.
Mm-hmm.
How it actually molds. Because the why for me, there are many days in business life, cybersecurity, information security life, just life in general, where I don't want to get out of bed. I'm tired. I don't want to do this today. It's just, I had my ass kicked. And it's always the why that gets me through it. It's always the why that makes, even though I have bad days at work, they don't persist because the why comes back. It reminds me why I'm here. We need that because so many times you see people run into these challenges and then they give up. And it's like, man, if you would have had a purpose and a why, you would have driven right through that damn wall.
Yeah. And I think there's an idea that, your why, you don't just like make up your why, like your why is discovered, like it's in you. And people maybe just haven't taken the time to meditate on it, to think about it, to discover it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is I think each of us have it within us. We may not just be aware of it or have come to understand what it is. That's where the Simon Sinek book was so valuable for me, was I knew there was something there, but it helped to kind of explain and quantify what it is and make it better to relate that way.
And it's what I think in life, it fosters connections between people. And we were talking before the show about, Evan was talking about, talking to someone that has differing opinions on politics and things, and how he had such a great conversation. And when you do the work of understanding your why, you'll probably find that our whys are often very similar between other people.
Well, not just that, but I don't have to go out and the more you discover your why, the more confident you are in yourself, in believing what you believe. Because so many times when you engage in these discussions where it's topics, it's touchy topics, people can't defend why they believe what they believe so often. And so then what you resort to is either changing the subject or attacking somebody else's character, which isn't productive. It doesn't solve anything. So, but if I come from a place where I'm very secure and with my why, I don't feel threatened in engaging in conversations that challenge that why. You actually welcome them because it either reinforces your why or it changes the way you approach your why. But one of the things that never changes once you actually get it is your why. It's so foundational.
Mm-hmm. So will you guys humor me with a little exercise?
Okay.
All right. So this is just an exercise that we've done when implementing some EOS stuff. And this is more related to values. So this is kind of discovering your values, your core values. And there's Patrick Lencioni talks about core values. What's his name? Jim Collins talks about it. So if you've ever kind of dove into kind of the building a vision for a company, but they make a point that this is, these are things that are timeless. These are things that exist, whether the business exists or not. These are still things that hold true to you. And we were talking just a bit earlier, Evan, man, you made the point that there are kind of some differences between your own personal values and the business values, but they are connected. Like the business values might have a little bit more business, directly related to what the business is doing, but they come from somewhere. And so this is kind of drilling down into the core. So here's what I want you guys to do.
Man, let me point out real quick, because the business values are drawn from your personal values. They're never at conflict with each other. They support each other. And I'll give you, I'll just share, give you my example. Like the only thing I give a shit about in life, truly, is to hear Jesus say, well done, when I die. That's it. It doesn't matter how much money I have. It doesn't matter nothing else matters. That's my worldview, right? And that's just, it doesn't mean you have to be a Christian, but that's where I'm coming from. And that's the transparency and that's the honesty that drives all the rest of it. So from that, there's always been this innate hatred of seeing people get taken advantage of. I hate it. I hate cheating. I mean, ask my kids growing up, they would play video games and they'd get cheat codes and unlock some new gun or something. And I would take the game away. I'm like, why the hell did you do that? And they're like, well, it's just a cheat code so I can unlock the gun. But you're supposed to earn it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's that kind of foundational. I want to hear Jesus say, well done. From that comes this hatred of seeing people get taken advantage of. From that comes the mission of fixing the broken industry, because that's all driven by, I hate to see people get taken advantage of. I hate attackers taking money from people, innocent people. I hate attackers scamming elderly people. I don't hate the people, but I hate the act of people within our industry selling people shit that doesn't work, that's not in your best interest, that you don't know how to use. You're just stealing their money. So that's what comes, so you can see how things grow from that to that. And then the core values are all things that support it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's power in learning how to connect those things too, especially when you're communicating that, because your why is something. It's not really something for you to like hide. It's like a mission, man. Like it's a go out there and share it. And when you're communicating it, and you say like, hey, my mission, my why is to fix a broken industry, but then you can continue that conversation by saying, and here's what that means, and here's where that comes from. You can help navigate and connect, when you're bringing people along for that ride, they can connect to that at such a deeper level. So that's why all of that's very good.
And you can obsess about it, because it defines the purpose. You can see the line. In my mind, I can see the line so clearly, how one thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing, which gets me to that ultimate goal of hearing Jesus say, well done. So there's no conflict in that stream of whys or purposes from one side to the other. But then you mentioned, last night I had a conversation, and I love these conversations, a friend who differs from me a lot politically. But the one thing that holds us together in that conversation is we both hate seeing people get taken advantage of. You just have a different approach and a different way that thing happens, different priorities, but that's our common ground. So, you're not even far left, I don't care. You're left, I'm right. But we can both agree that we hate seeing people get taken advantage of. So you can see how that why, that purpose drives all these other things that make it, I think it just enriches your life. Everything in life is better because, you entertain all these perspectives.
So let's discover some values here. Meg, would you want to go first?
Sure.
All right. So it's very simple. Just take a moment to think about someone that you admire. Think about why you admire them. Try to think down or write down or just bring to your mind the qualities about them that you really look up to, that you admire, and then just kind of talk about it. Just let it.
So I did give this some thought, and my obvious answer would be Jesus, just because I'm also a fellow Christian. But I don't say this enough, and I don't say it publicly enough, but I really admire my husband. He is just a phenomenal guy. Like he's an excellent communicator. He is an incredible father, a business leader. We have the privilege of both working from home. So we've always had our jobs that we both went to. And within, a short period of time, both of us ended up working from home. And so I've never really gotten to see Jim kind of at work. But I have so much respect for that guy's leadership, and his ability to lead a company is bar none. I mean, it's just, there's just so much about him. And, I think the things that I really admire about Jim are, the whole like yin to my yang. We're so different. We're very different people, but I have aspirations to be more, like him, and in a variety of ways, whether it's work, home. So that's the admiration that I have.
So you mind if I drill in a bit? All right. And I'm gonna pick one thing, because there's a lot there. You say he's a good father. What makes him a good father?
Jim is extremely involved in our children's lives. We have all adult children now. We have 5 children. Our youngest is 21, and but just if I look at him as a father, like all the way growing up, just his leadership in terms of spiritually, his work ethic, and what he brings to the table in our family as a model for our children. His ability, he had, when I first met Jim, he can talk to anybody. So there's like no misstep. So it's whether you're talking to a CEO or a homeless guy in the street, they're going to feel the same way when they're talking to Jim. So, he just has that about him. And I think that he's done a really good job of instilling that in our children, that, we don't to certain people because of their status in life. So those are just a few things that make him he's very, very involved. My kids, he has excellent relationships with my children now, and speaks regularly, like daily with some of them, definitely weekly with others, stays real involved. And he helps grow, transitioning to having adult children that are now kind of on their own. We have our first grandkid coming in about a week, and they've set some boundaries with the new baby. And of course the mom in me is like, what? What do you mean I can't kiss the child? And Jim just can bring me down to an understanding of, this is their lives, it's their decisions. So he really helps kind of coach me in some of the emotions that can come out when dealing with tough things.
Cool.
Awesome.
Jim is an awesome dude.
So
You
let me see.
scored more, but I think he did too.
Thank you.
Jordan,
What?
what are you typing? You typing a book over there or what?
I'm doing something. Hold on.
No,
GPT.
buddy. Yeah.
What the hell did Meg just say?
So while I'm doing this, because I want to drill into the value. So, and there's a lot there, a lot of different things. So, but let's move on to Dave. Same question.
Sure. I've actually kind of gone through this on a personal level, just through things that have happened in life where I really did take a deep dive to try and understand what is my why. And the Simon Sinek book and everything like that really helped. But the bottom line is what I learned is my why is I am driven to try and make things better. It doesn't matter what it is, who it is, really, or where it is. You're always going to kind of see me for wherever we're at, say, okay, what is it? How can we make it better? And when I learned that about myself, then it kind of helped me rather than say, okay, this person I admire for it. I would see where others were coming from. And some of the words I had written down were, honesty, transparency, and humility is a huge one. So whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm going, or whoever I'm talking with, I'm quietly measuring against that. And that's what I use to try and help make sure I'm in the presence of good people. Because if you just try and say, I want to make things better, and you're around a lot of the wrong people, it's not going to happen. But when you kind of find the ones of your tribe, whether it's whatever drives them, if you find that alignment, then you got something magical to work with.
Awesome. Is there anyone else in your life that you feel as you were growing up or just experienced with them that it kind of helped you form these things, or were an example of this prior to you kind of figuring this out?
Well, my parents were invaluable in instilling good values, of honesty and being truthful and really knowing internally we're all given free will. So what are the choices that you make with those opportunities? So I was fortunate to grow up in a supportive, stable home environment that way. And then kind of like Evan was saying, you take who you are as that person, and then part of it you take into your personal life with your family or into work and business, and you just try and be around those people. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, all three of you are inspirational people to me in certain ways in the way that you've allowed me to come in, be a part of this family. And, but I just, after this, I'll hop on the next call. And it's just kind of how I am. And if we took a look at the calls that I'm going to have on the calendar, they all orbit around that. And it's all just trying to drive things or to try and find ways to make things better as best as possible. Because I'll share this with you, where there are a lot of people that are inspirational. And I could say, sure, my parents, but it's not like my parents are their own people. There are things where we do disagree and have become our own individuals. But in that regard, I hold them in very high regard and treasure them that way.
Awesome. Evan.
Yo, what's up? You want me to answer that question?
Yeah.
It depends on the day. And so, because I thought about that, I'm like, well, I admire this person. I think I got to thinking, and I took it probably deeper than I should have, or maybe. I think there's something to admire in everybody, to be honest. You know what I mean? I think, like, there's things I admire about you, Jordan. There's things I admire about Dave. There's things I admire about Meg. So I don't know if there's anybody I admire to a point where it's like I elevate them to a level of like a pedestal kind of thing, because I kind of feel like when I do that, then expectations kind of creep in, and then I set myself up for disappointment and set them up for failure, which is kind of a weird thing, but that's how I feel. So I think I admire and then I'm thinking like, well, I admire Matt, who showed up last night, unannounced and fell asleep on my couch. I admire my wife. I admire my daughter, Lydia, my youngest daughter, who's like, just makes the stupidest damn choices, but there's things about her that are just beautiful that I admire. I admire her sense of innocence, her beautiful heart. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's any one person I admire. I think I look for things that I admire about everybody I meet. And I think that's what makes it easier to value people, maybe.
That in and of itself is probably a value. Like a core value is being able to admire everyone. Well, certain things, there's nobody I admire everything about, you know what I mean? Because we all have faults, right? So there's nobody I'm like, I admire everything, no. But, like even my own wife. Yeah, my wife is the best person in the planet for me. And she's amazing and all that other shit. But there's things I admire about her, but there's things about her that I'm like, no, stop that shit. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's just like there's things I admire about. You can always find, because I'm even challenging myself that now. I'm like, I think there's things you can find to admire in everybody. Mm-hmm. It's whether or not you're able to go there. Mm-hmm. I think that's huge. I mean, we got to it maybe a different way than I was thinking we'd get to it, but the way that you took this exercise is a very important value in life, to be able to see the beauty in everyone. Like the world is missing that right now too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely things about everyone too that irritate the shit out of me. Absolutely.
I mean, take Kevin for instance. Like Kevin, I love him. He's my work wife. I mean, dude, everybody needs a Kevin. But there are days I would, if we were in the right circumstance and we were in close proximity to each other and I had a sharp object, I would have stabbed him in the neck. I don't advocate for that. I said what I would have done. There's no active threat. There's no like, I'm going to kill Kevin. I'm not going to do that.
But what does Jesus say?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Jesus, thank God, he put this situation in a place where I couldn't do that.
He moved you to Mexico.
I can't do that on a Zoom call, but yeah. Well, it's that love-hate thing. It makes the bond that much tighter because it's genuine. It's transparent. It's raw. Like my wife said, you like Violet more than me. I'm a big believer in telling the truth. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of true. And she's like, well, she was offended, but then I was like, I need to defend why that's true, right? It's not that I love her more, I mean, it's just, you don't have to worry about her replacing you. It's a different kind of relationship, but my dog always forgives me. My dog's always happy to see me. My dog always lifts me up. My dog, all these selfless things, like, I don't think anybody can stand up to that. You know what I mean? So it's no knock on you, but if you could do those things that Violet could do, then yeah, then I'd like you more, but I don't think you can do it. That's another thing I'm saying too about putting people on this like pedestal and like doing this comparison thing. I'm just setting you up for failure because I'm going to be disappointed. If I thought that you were going to forgive me all the time like Violet does and all that shit, you're going to fail because you're human. And now I'm disappointed. Disappointment leads to resentment. It's just like, man, screw that, right? I'm just going to be truthful with you and tell you, confront me like that. It was better for you not to answer the question if you didn't want the damn answer, I think.
Well, and I think you got a point because there will be what is the line? Never meet your idols, because there are the things the aspects of them that you do put on a pedestal, but it's those individual things.
Right.
But to think that they're going to be on a pedestal level for everything, yeah, that's a fast track to disappointment and the potential of stopping appreciating what originally brought you both together and what you valued in that person.
And for the purpose of trying to, really start your journey of discovering your core values, it's not as much about putting that person on a pedestal as much as drilling into that thing that you do admire about them. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the essence of that? And it doesn't have to be everything, but there's that one thing, and you're like, and because you're drawn to it, you're kind of doing that starting work of, I'm drawn to that because of something like that's coming from somewhere inside of me. And that's what I admire about them.
Well, it's like StrengthsFinders. One of the things I learned about StrengthsFinders that just resonated so well with me was you capitalize on your strengths and you minimize your weaknesses. And I try to do the same thing with my relationships. Like with my wife, I focus on her strengths. She's super fucking creative. She can love like nobody else, right? She got this patience that I don't know where it comes from. She deals with an ADHD guy like a master, but then she's got her weaknesses, right? Like I'm tired of going to Starbucks every single day, like multiple times a day. You know what I mean? It's the complaints, so minimize those things. You know what I mean? When I recognize, it's like minimize that shit, maximize the good shit, and I want people to, I wish people would do the same thing, for me, because yeah, I'm really hard to deal with for sure. But there's some good shit here. Mm-hmm. So, you talk about like, go ahead.
I think we all aspire for that, that not only do we view the world that way by minimizing the bad and maximizing the good, but also just internally wanting to be treated that way, wanting people to do the same thing for us.
So for me, there's one, and I've done this, with the work that I've done with other businesses that I've either started or been a part of going through this process. There's one core value that comes from me that has always, when you're doing for different companies, sometimes you're connecting different things because the goal is that you're like, what's that unified thing? But the one that's been always showing up for me is the idea of brighten the room. I call it brighten the room. And that comes from my dad. I mean, he didn't say brighten the room, but when I think about someone I admire, I think about my dad. And growing up, he was a coffee salesman, and there were a lot of times, we didn't have a lot of money, and he worked hard, probably more hours than he would like to, but there'd be times where I'd have to go on like a service call with him, because he's a salesman, but like his clients would, if the restaurant's coffee maker was broken, he'd also be like the service guy too, and he'd have to go out there and make sure they had enough coffee, make sure their thing was working. And one of the things I remember about him is, he's still alive, he's not, but one of the things I admire about him in that moment, in those moments, is like he was someone who was always smiling, could always similar to your husband, Meg, like he could always just talk to anyone and make them feel like the center of attention, make them feel like they had an inside joke together and just laughing and and but he wouldn't just go, fix the coffee maker or give them they ran out of coffee, so they needed some more. Like he'd do that on a Saturday. But when he would go in there, he would make sure things were sparkling when he left. Like he would wipe things down. If the coffee maker hadn't been cleaned, he'd clean it up. He'd wipe things down. He'd just, after he showed up, when all the restaurant needed was like, hey, we're out of coffee and it's, Saturday. Like they just needed coffee. But he'd show up and he'd leave with that place sparkling and people smiling. And from that came, my core value of brighten the room, leave things better than you found it. Leave people feeling better than they first, because they were around you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so core to me that it makes me cry too, because it's just like, I admire people like that.
James, I see that in you. You do brighten up the room. I look forward to every time I get to talk with you. I look forward to when you join these podcasts because you do brighten up the room. You make me feel better. You laugh at my jokes, even when they're not funny. And it's like, who doesn't want to be a part of that? So thank you for that.
And that Start With Why book touches on it, but that's what makes your dad be more inspirational to others, like you said, just brightening that room where, as opposed to, hey, we're out of coffee. So he swings, all right, here's your damn coffee.
Yeah, right.
I'm out of here. It's a Saturday, versus the way he handled the situation and just being in the moment.
Yeah. So I appreciate all that. So what we did there was just kind of start the process of discovering some values and there's intersections of those things, It's like my why came from a place or value. I should call it value because we're not quite to the why piece, but it starts from like these core values that you have. And my why is very similar, Dave, driven to try to make things better, and things. So humor me for a second because when I was typing, what I was trying to do is get to a place where we've all shared some stories. We've all shared some stuff. So I did a little, chat GPT to kind of narrow it down here and tell me what you think of this. And this is really fast. Like people can spend, a whole day trying to figure out what truly is the core value that they share with this. But so consolidating a lot of that stuff, it's possible that the four of us, our core values that we share together are integrity with humility, purposeful leadership, and uplifting presence. Now that's just kind of taking all the things we've said and kind of putting it into, if we had three things that maybe we could unify around that are core values to what we're doing, ChatGPT kind of does a good job of kind of organizing that. But that's a quick exercise to get to a place where you start to really drill in and establish what keeps you going. What is your why? What do you value the most? And what are you going to fall back on for the reasons you're doing everything that you're doing? What do you guys think of that?
I did this in my personal life, I don't know, a few years ago. And honestly, I need to get back to that because I've fallen off the wagon a little bit. When, with health and wellness has always been really important to me. And as you age, like it just becomes more and more important. And I don't remember what got me on this road of discovering my why, but it was probably something that I had joined or something that pushed for it. And when I went through the exercise, it literally was just asking yourself the question, why? Like, why is that important to you? And then you come up with an answer, and then you ask yourself why again. And then you keep asking yourself why until there isn't an answer to the why anymore. And then that becomes like you're dialed in. This is what will motivate me. This is my why, and ultimately why I want to eat better, why I want to perform better at work, why, whatever it is that you're focusing on. And I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah. It's funny, like when we were kids, a lot of us were kind of conditioned to stop asking why.
Mm-hmm.
To stop the discovery. I think about my own childhood and my dad was an amazing human being, and I'm just, really glad that I was able to be raised in that household. But a lot of times it was why, and it was because I said so. Or why does it work this way, Daddy? And he'd be like, well, blah, blah, blah. And he'd be like, well, why that? And he'd be like, eventually it's like, stop stop asking why. And I get it, right? Yeah, there's got to be, this balance, but why stop asking why about everything? Become more like a child, that childlike kind of curiosity about everything. I think it opens up so many different perspectives. I think that's what happens.
And I think to really try and find what the why is, part of what the mental exercise is stripping away
Did you say stripping?
perceptions. I did, yeah.
It's a part.
But so I'll go there again. Stripping away, taking away any of those perceptions, like we were talking about, whether it's political, religious, or social, or whatever, being able to just, okay, once you've stripped away, you're kind of what I call being naked in the rain at that time. And that's who you are.
Podcast taking on a whole new meaning.
Yeah, just standing there exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let it all hang out. I mean, you got to do that.
So I know that there's so much deeper things we can talk about with this, but for the sake of a VCISO or someone out there that's just kind of trying to discover this stuff, so we got to maybe a somewhat okay place where if the four of us were sharing some values and kind of trying to settle on something, we have three decent ones. But I think the power of the values, so you settle on maybe these three, Patrick Lencioni says try to get it to three, but some people have 5, but less is more. And these are things where once you have kind of the because it's not necessarily about the words, it's about the meaning. It's about the story behind it. It's about the why. So we can sit here and say, okay, purposeful leadership is one of our values, but there's so much wealth deeper in that. What does that mean? What we mean by that? So when my advice to folks would be, as you're discovering your values, okay, good, you have this cute little word or 2 words or whatever, but now keep doing the work of, and what we mean by that. And what I mean by that is this, so that when you're communicating those things, and if you're trying to build a business and a lot of different applications to this, but let's say you are growing a business and you're trying to hire someone, and you want them to share those same values. This is part of you feeling comfortable here, is that you connect with what we feel is a core value. And so you can sit there and say, our core value is purposeful leadership, but it's not gonna mean anything to them. So then you have to go, and what we mean by that is this. This is how it dictates our actions. Everything we do has a purpose to it, is going towards the mission, and we believe in taking the first step towards that, or whatever it is. You get to come up with what your story is. EOS would call that the speech. So it's the core value, but then it's the speech behind it of what that actually means, that gives it color and connection. And that's what people, yourself included, the more you give that speech of that core value, it connects it deeper within you, but let alone other people. And then coming out, like Evan, you said earlier, into, okay, what does that mean for the business? I do my VCISO this way because I believe in purposeful leadership. And what I mean by that is this, and this is how it plays out. All that stuff gets connected.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I see a lot of people do with business is, and Traction talks about this, right? The visionary role, the integrator role. Somebody has to define what the purpose is. A lot of times we're looking for consensus, but at the end of the day, either you buy in or you don't buy in. And the purpose of core values is you hire and fire by those things. They're that important. They're not just marketing slogans you put up on the website. We mean it. So one of those is we tell the truth, and I reinforce all the time. There's 2 types of lies. There's the lies of commission and lies of omission. The lies of commission, there's zero tolerance for. The lies of omission, those are learning opportunities, where you should have told somebody something that you didn't. But all that fits into, the core thing. So I think it's, number one, somebody's got to just take it and own it, right? That's why a lot of businesses that are 50-50 partnerships, they don't work out, because you're going to have, when you get this deep, you're going to find conflicts, and you're not going to be able to resolve those, and it's going to probably end up not so good. So somebody's got to own it. Somebody's got to define these things. Somebody's got to own it all. And then the core values have to be actionable. They're not just marketing slogans. We plan to run the business with these things, and everybody's held accountable, including the person who made the damn rules. So, I think that's the disconnect I see a lot, is you sit around the room and say, well, what are our core values? And you should look to the CEO or the owner or whoever sits at the top and say, I don't know, what are our values? Let's start there, and then I can tell you whether I feel comfortable with that or not. I can challenge that, to make sure, like, do you really mean that? Or is this just a bullshit marketing slogan? Like you say to tell the truth, but you lie all the time. How the hell is that going to work? You know what I mean? So there's kind of this, I can't think of a better word to say, but I don't like the pussyfooting around core values. They're so important. You don't compromise on those things.
Yeah.
And
They're so foundational.
And if I'm a human, so I'm going to make mistakes. So just because of the core values doesn't mean that I live by them all the time and I don't make mistakes. I have moments of weakness where I do things that are wrong. Because that drives then like transparency in the relationship and the communication. I was just having discussions with our ELT because, there was some disagreement in the ELT, and what it came from is like this failure to communicate amongst the group. So it came up to me, and it was like, I didn't want to tell them this. I was afraid to tell them this in this group. And I'm like, why would you do that? That's a lie of omission. You need to tell them. Well, what are you afraid of? It's coming from a place of love. And then I asked the group, like, I see how in this dynamic, we're struggle sometimes. It's an exercise, right? You just get better at it. But we're not 100% being truthful and transparent with each other. But yet we're trusting each other with these decisions for our livelihood and the mission. I get that. We're working on that. And we're going to keep working on that because now you got my attention on it and whatever. And then I asked, each one of them individually, if I was fucking up, would you tell me? And they're like, well, it depends. I'm like, on what? Like, well, you're the owner. I'm like, and that makes me exempt. Like, that makes me infallible. I need you guys to fucking tell me. I absolutely have to have it. Because if nobody tells me, I don't know, and I keep screwing up and I'm hurting the mission. You know what I mean? I don't know how I got there, but that's one of the things I see in like this, in the core values. It's meant to bring peace and like drive this thing, all towards the mission. And when you don't take these core values seriously, they're just cracks. And they eventually, just like a crack in the concrete, water gets in there and freezes. It just gets bigger and bigger. And then it eventually, I don't know. I keep talking, but
I think one of the problems across the board in organizations, regardless of the industry, a lot of times people will go through the exercise, and a lot of times it is a leadership team of identifying your core values and what's your mission and vision and whatever. But it's not, it then gets kind of like tucked away on a shelf that is never addressed, never talked about. People out doing the work, they don't understand the mission. They don't even know what it is if you ask them. Mm-hmm. That's when you really know if you've communicated effectively and if you really live by what your mission and vision is.
Yeah.
If it's just a catchphrase, right, that nobody really knows about or cares about or isn't working towards, then something needs to be done.
Yeah, I would say if that's what happens, then you probably didn't nail them. You probably have some more work to do to get, because once you nail them, you get passionate about it, man. Like you're like, yeah, that is core to what I value. Like,
right.
Yeah, and just that's why even like in EOS, they say it's so important to do this first because it's so foundational in the organization and its clarity, because all of these things come up and we refer back to them when conflict or something else happens that takes you off track. Mm-hmm. These are kind of those guardrails that say, hey, let's just go back to the foundational stuff. And that's where we can kind of refine ourselves and play it forward from there.
Yeah. And if you don't do it first, what you end up doing is you end up hiring people. They start investing their lives. I mean, you're dealing with people's lives, right? They're not just employees, some thing. Right. And so if you don't do this early on in the process, what happens is you start hiring people and then you sit down and do this thing. And then you find that, 3, 4, 5, some number of employees don't fit with those core values. So what are you going to do then? Right. And if you're a person of integrity who actually intends to use the core values the way they're intended, they either have to change, which is really hard to ask people to do that. They are who they are. So you end up having to let them go. which, that's just a consequence. So you start it early, because the longer you go before you define these things, I think the harder it's going to be and the more impact it's going to have on your business, at least short term, that's going to suck.
And I'm one of those people too that I'm not afraid to get very personal with it, with this exercise. The last one that I was doing recently, what I threw on the list, to collaborate on it, I threw love, and they all kind of, not they all, as another person kind of went, what does this have to do with business? But to me, love is everything. The purpose of life, love, and so it can't be much more core to me than that. But the reason why I don't mind going down that road is because, okay, maybe right off the bat you don't see the business connection, but what do I mean by love? I can mean passion. I can mean you want what's best for others. Like you start going into the why do you say love? What does this mean? You start to see like, oh, that's the business connection. Like when I'm doing my VCISO or whatever I'm doing, I'm doing it from a place where I want what's best for you. I want to help you get to your potential, and the reason I want that is because I believe life is all about love. Like it comes from a place of love, and so to me, and when you're doing this exercise and you're discovering this thing, don't be afraid to get out of that businessy thing and get to real core values for you in life and existence.
Well, right. I mean, you saw the hearing Jesus say, "Well done," to the hatred of seeing people get taken advantage of, that's all love. I think so much, sadly, many people in the world don't know what love actually means. I think that, we've taken it to mean a whole bunch of things, and there's different types of love. We're talking like the agape kind of love where, I will put at least in this context, I will put your needs ahead of my own. And I won't keep any record of wrongs, right? I mean, read 1 Corinthians 13, meaning like, yeah, you made a mistake, right? When I come in on an incident response because you didn't take my advice, I'm not going to remind you all the shit that you didn't do that I told you should have done.
Yeah.
We're going to focus, we're going to forgive, and we're going to move on. It's just, I totally get what you're saying, Jordan. It's all about love. And the people that work with you, that work for you, when you truly love them, it gives you the ability to empathize, to understand that they rely on the decisions that I make. You have to feel that weight. Like it's not about one individual person. A decision you make might affect the entire organization. They have bills to pay, they have dreams, they have kids going to college, they have sicknesses. Right? So I totally get the love thing, man. That's so huge for me.
Well, when you use a word like love, there's going to be different interpretations. So if you're in that room and you're throwing it out there, your definition of it or why you went to that word. And that's where the context behind it of explaining it has so much value because they're going to have their perception of what it means and go, well, what does that have to do with business? Well, this is why I say that, and it drives the point home. Or it adds that context to, like you were saying earlier, to help have us all be on the same page as best as possible.
And most of love has nothing to do with what you say. It's what you do. Right. So, a lot of customers I've worked with over the years, there's a reason why FR Secure won't ever sell you product, because it's not in your best interest. Right. Then we're tempted to sell you products that you may not need, whatever. So it's like, it's just in the way you operate. Right. It becomes like obvious. And then they want you to come back. They want you to be their VCISO because you actually give a shit about them. You'll put in the extra hours. Like if I made a mistake, I don't charge you more for it. I fix it. I correct it. And it's all about that mission before money. If you focus on the mission, you will make money. Believe me. If you focus on the money, you won't make the mission. So if you're talking about purpose, if you're talking about driven by some kind of altruistic reason why you're here, focus on the mission. Because I've seen it happen way too many times in these industries in particular, where people started out, I think, for the right reasons in this industry, but ended up selling out in the long term. And so ended up started taking money, tons and tons. Yesterday I was ripping on, on our podcast, I was ripping on CrowdStrike. Awesome tool for sure. There's no doubt about it. It's expensive as hell. But then, put that into context. Is CrowdStrike what's best for the industry? When you consider the fact that they sell people, things that they don't know how to use, that probably isn't in their best interest at this time. And it's expensive as hell. And they continue to add more product. There's no accountability. There's just a whole list of things. So yeah, I guess I'm calling out George Kurtz. George Kurtz, I think, was in this industry at the beginning very much for the right reasons. And I think George Kurtz has since sold out, but that's just an example that I use so that I don't do the same damn thing. It's always got to be mission before money for me. Now, at other companies, if you're really motivated by money, well, then that's the kind of company you're going to have. And you're going to have these core values. But I can't understand how there wouldn't be some sense of emptiness inside, because there's no amount of money you could ever give me to make me to compensate for the lack of purpose. You know what I'm saying? It's that important. Anyway, I keep preaching. You guys aren't going to invite me back because I keep talking too damn much.
And I wanted to touch on something quick, because you alluded to it earlier, Evan, about like these core values aren't meant to be marketing stuff. This isn't meant to be. This is more personal. But my personal opinion is that I don't mind, like, I think that they can come out in your sales discussions too, because it's you. So while you might not present them as like marketing and like a sales pitch, because that's not what they are, you can, as you're trying to talk to a prospect about your vCISO services, there's no harm in saying, like, I might not go through all of them, but you might say, like, here's how I deliver vCISOs. And the reason I do that,
For
is
sure.
one of my core values is this. And it plays out in my vCISO services like this. I have no problem with making sure, because when you do that, you're connecting yourself again, like you're grounding yourself back to, this is why I'm doing this, and you're helping them connect with you. If that resonates with them, then they're like, oh yeah, that's I see why. I see what I think I'll get from you in vCISO, because I see that it's connected to a core value that I also share or admire, so.
I totally agree with that too, man. Because, I mentioned those 3 buckets: trust, credibility, and likability. Those are the 3 things you need to get customers, right? So trust. Well, one way to erode trust is certainly to not do what your core values say, right? It's a hypocrite, and who wants to do business with a hypocrite, especially when you're talking about information security stuff where trust is so important. The credibility piece, because I think at first when we started with our core values at FR Secure, it was bullshit, because it's countercultural, right? You're not going to sell product. Like, you're going to stay true to this mission. Like, this mission actually means something. You're going to start the CISSP mentor program and you're going to give people free training. Bullshit. But that's a great opportunity for you to step up to the plate and demonstrate your core values to the world, which just elevates that trust and that credibility. The likability thing I can't really help, because I am the way I am. So I'm glad we have people like Dave and Megan that can be likable.
You're likable, Evan.
The older I get, the more unlikable I become, because I'm like, get off my fucking lawn.
I hope this was valuable to someone. I think it's important if you're starting in whatever career, but like,
Yeah. No,
I think it's important for life. I do too, man. I think it's important for me personally when I'm alone, to give me that, because like when you're alone, you question things like, why am I doing this? Why am I like this? Why do I not have friends? Whatever it is you're questioning, that purpose, brings that out. It's what keeps my marriage together often, when there's times when it's just like, get out of here kind of thing. It's that purpose that weaves that together. It just kind of weaves its way through everything, I think, in my life. And I don't know if it's the same with everybody else, but when I see it, I can really appreciate its value, and I want other people to feel the same thing. You know what I mean? It really is. It really feels good, and I want people to feel good about it.
Awesome.
Yeah. And just on the real quick, on the flip side of that, Jordan, as you're being open, honest, transparent in those ways to a client or a prospect, if they're not reciprocating that, I mean, for whatever you both can dial in on and identify with, that's what you got to work with. But if you find that those things aren't there, that's something great to identify as upfront, because you can start to see how things would play out if you were to, like Evan said, chase the money versus the mission.
Right. And what
how
a
many
great
times
thing
you had
to have clients that you share their values and their mission, and you're helping them achieve these great values and mission and whys. And I mean,
that's where the magic happens.
You had your own business too. And how many times, over the years, there's been lots of times when our customers have put our values to the test, right? It doesn't always come from us and internally, but they've asked us to compromise our values, change the report, make it say something different, communicate something in it, we don't do that. we stay true to who we are and our mission, and we don't let anybody change that, including customers.
Yeah. And that's why the values and identifying the values up front is so important, so you can catch those red flags as soon as they happen.
Totes my goats. All right. Is that a wrap, Jordan?
That's a wrap.
No, this is a wrap. Yo, Evan.
What?
My
You
name is
stopped.
Jordan Darling, and I'm here to say that I kick major butt in a major way.
I admire you, Jordan, for being able to come up with that on the fly.
Yeah.
Have you seen his videos? I mean,
Waiting to
I
say
know.
that rap.
I know.
Yes.
the dude has some serious skills. Big time.
Talk about creative.
Right. All right. We'll see you next week.
See you, people.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.